Hi, guys. So, I'm going to talk about the Jan Broberg case, and with that, I'm going to talk about two pieces of media that are out there in regards to this case and kind of comparing the two. And from there, you can decide which one would you like to watch. So, on Netflix, there is a documentary called Abducted in Plain Sight made in 2017 where Jan, her family, some people who were involved with the case basically come on and, you know, talk through the experience, talk through the main events, talk through it. It's not going to get through like the nitty gritty of every conversation, but basically talks through this experience of, being kidnapped twice, once at the age of 12, once at the age of 14. And mind you, this is during like the 70s. Um, and I'll get to that, in a minute. My thoughts on that, I mean. But then you have the recent A Friend of the Family that is through Peacock. And this is 9 episodes, about 50 minutes to an hour each. And you know, with that, it's going to be, it is actor portrayals. And with that, some things are dramatized, like it is based on true events, but with some things, for the sake of television, I think, hey, do we need to draw this out a bit for story? Do we need to add in some things, add a little flavor, what have you? Now, why bring up the fact that this was in the 70s? I've heard a lot of this recently when I've been watching documentaries. Um, when it comes to, I would say, like the 50s into like mid 70s, maybe late 70s, I've heard like essentially the phrase of it was a safe time. We didn't like people didn't need to lock their doors, like, trusted everybody, what have you. And I've heard that now in like three or four documentaries within the last like 2 months. And I'm like, and I get that. I get why I think that is a thought because during that time, I think things were very different. Um, of course, things were still happening, but I think it just depends. Is it happening in your area? And I loved it, honestly, because in the mini series, the Peacock series, A Friend of the Family, literally a character says it like straight off the bat. She's like, "We live in Idaho. What's gonna happen here?" And I was like, "Can like honestly though, like." Like like it's the 70s. You think you live in a state or an area where it's like nothing's gonna happen, and something happened. And no one can really talk about it because it's like under wraps, with what was going on. And it's just I just thought, I was like, oh my god, the fact that they added that in, I think it's perfect. It's like it kind of, I wouldn't say sets the scene, but that's where everything I think changes for a lot of people. Nowadays, we all lock our doors. Some of us have like security systems, some of us live in like guarded neighborhoods. Like, like security now is like the big thing everyone needs. And when it comes to, I would say, the events that happen in regards to Abducted in Plain Sight that they talk about, as well as A Friend of the Family, like it matches bit by bit. Um, I would say the only things where it is maybe up to chance or that's dramatized, we don't know, is maybe a lot of the conversations, maybe I would say a lot of the situations revolving Berchtold's wife, and maybe, situations involving other families as well. Because within the documentary Abducted in Plain Sight, and I should say, like, at this point, I am going to be talking a lot about the show and the documentary, so maybe, there are going to be spoilers. I don't want anyone to be upset if it's like, oh, I wasn't done, like, so if you don't want to be spoiled, or if you don't want to hear essentially what happens in the documentary or in the show, you've been warned. But, in the documentary, we don't see anything in regards to a lot when it comes to Berchtold's wife and family. Like, we get like I think a sentence or two. We don't get a ton. And when it comes to, I would say, even like other people, like when I say families, like people within the church that they kind of talk a little bit about and make important. And even the FBI investigator who's helping out the Broberg family, he has a family. Like, that situation, like, we don't know too much about, because the documentary is just on this situation. It is just on Jan, her family, what happened, and like a little bit of Berchtold's background. Like, is there maybe a reason why he acted this way? Because there usually is. Like, what was his upbringing like? They go into that a tad, and it. I think it's just really interesting. I think the main criticism that I've heard a lot when it comes to just this case is, why couldn't they have spotted it? Why wouldn't they have known better? Couldn't you have seen it? Again, when it comes to people such as this, it is a lot of manipulation. It takes years. So you see in the show and in the documentary, it's not like they just moved to town and then they were like, hey, I want to, like, do these events or whatever. Like, it's not like they just moved and then they did these things. It took, like, it was groomed, And not only was he, I would say, engaging or wanting to engage in activities when it came to Jan, but they talk about how he was involved with her mom, and how there was an incident, like some, situations with the dad. And, you know, in that regard, you don't know then, because those things happened, what is he willing to share if we don't go along with maybe certain activities. It's hard, like, maybe you think it's harmless or it's not meant to be cruel. It's very sneaky, it's manipulative, and even the miniseries, I think, does a very good of just saying it outright. He's a sociopath. He does not care. He does what he wants, and he gets what he wants. And you see that a lot in the miniseries. So, if you are wanting, I would say, a straight answer as to which is better, which should I watch, if you want to know more in regards to this case, of course, if you want straight facts, and if you want, I would say, their reactions, like the people involved, the Broberg family, obviously watch the documentary. It's like an hour and 40 minutes long. And it's not, I would say, boring in any way. But if you like the actor portrayal, and how if you liked if you like actor portrayals and how and then it just is it depends on how well they portray the situation. I think this one does a very good job of portraying the situation. It matches up directly with all the incidents that happen, as well as I think it helps that Jan, um, the individual involved in this whole case, she's a part of this series. She's in it. Like, she went on to act and, was in Hollywood and everything. Um, and so I think having her involved, kind of her, I wouldn't say having a say, but just being involved in this project and probably, contributing in some way, shape, or form as to, oh, like what would that character say? What's going on? I think that helps a lot as well. Um, because she was there, she knew. Um, so that's kind of my 2 cents. I personally would still just watch the documentary because I like documentaries, but I didn't think the miniseries was bad at all. I love the cast. McKenna Grace is like in everything now, so you know, and why not? She's great in everything that she's in. So aside from her though, as well, the whole cast was great. Like I'm not just singling her out. I just know I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, girl, you working, like, praise. So, um, that's my thoughts on it. Feel free to leave your thoughts down below on what you think, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.